Dante's Confession. At the end of Purgatory, Dante confesses to Beatrice. The word confession leaves no doubt, but the context is completely different from that of Catholic confession. In fact, the Encyclopedia Dantesca asserts that the noun in Dantean use never had the same penitential sense of manifestation and accusation of personal sins to the priest. His confession corresponds instead in many ways to that practiced by the Cathars. For this reason, I will speak more about it further on when I deal with Cathar rites in the comedy. Meanwhile, I can however reveal in advance that Beatrice is certainly not a priest, that confession is public, that it occurs out loud in front of all those present, and that it involves neither penance nor absolution. The critics also interpret as a confession by Dante the scene in front of the door of Purgatory that I contest sharply, despite knowing that this interpretation is old and authoritative. Page 147. At the onset of the first night, Dante was sleeping in the so-called Valley of the Princes, but on waking found himself in a different place. Virgil explains that while he slept, Lucy took him and transported him to the entrance to the actual real purgatory. The entrance was made of a closed door, in front of which an angel was seated. A symbol of priestly confession, the Bosco Reggio edition concludes, committing an error that reveals little familiarity with the world of symbol. In symbolic language there are precise rules. That which is inferior can symbolize something superior, but the reverse is impossible. The sun can symbolize God, not God the sun. For that reason an angel cannot be a symbol for a priest. This angel has the brightest face, a sword in hand, symbol of justice, and an ash-colored robe, symbol of penitence or humility. At the door, they walk up 3 steps. The first is of very clear white marble, the second of black crumbling rock, rough and cracked along and across it, the third of red porphyry. The threshold of the door, on which the angel is seated, appears to be diamond stone. The commentators see in these steps the 3 parts of the sacrament of confession: contritio cordis, confessio oris, satisfactio operis, that is, contrition from the heart, oral confession, satisfaction rendered with works of penance. Chiavacchi speaks concerning these steps of absolute evidence of symbol. I don't see it. Virgil suggests that Dante humbly asked the angel to open the door. Devoutly at the holy feet I cast me, for mercy's sake besought that he would open, but first upon my breast 3 times I smote. Purgatory 9, 109 to 111. The beating of the chest 3 times with the formula mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa is part of the rite of confession, all the commentators conclude. But Dante hasn't said mea culpa, and has not even confessed his sins, something that he will do at the end of Purgatory with Beatrice. Strangely enough, a Cathar rite also exists, page 148, that provides for the beating of the chest 3 times, not saying mea culpa, not asking for mercy, just as Dante does. Of this, none of the commentators obviously speak, but I am sure that, despite all the necessary caution and ambiguity, it is to a Cathar rite that he makes reference to here. I will go deeper into the question further on. Then the angel carves 7 P's on Dante's forehead with the point of his sword, symbol of the 7 capital sins. P is the initial of the word peccato, sin, say the commentators. To tell the truth, it's also the initial for prova, test, or purification. Dante, however, doesn't say to which word the P corresponds. Then from under his garment the angel takes 2 keys, 1 gold and 1 silver, received from the Apostle Peter. Respectively, they are the symbol of authority conferred by Christ to St. Peter, and through him to the minister to absolve sins, and that of the knowledge necessary to judge sins. They are not to be confused with the two keys brought to Guido da Montefeltro's mind by Pope Boniface VIII. How not to be confused? They're exactly the same thing. If anything, it is right there and only there that it alludes to confession, given the absolution is spoken of. I now absolve you. You surely know that I possess the power to lock and unlock heaven, for the keys are two. Hell 27, 101 to 104. Dante doesn't take this absolution very seriously, granted by a pope no less, and places Guido in hell. But there is no doubt that the angel and the pope make reference to the same keys. There aren't two bunches of keys, but there is a problem. The keys that Boniface VIII refers to, and that the Church has even put on its coat of arms, are those given by Jesus to Peter. Here, though, the angel says, I received these from Peter, and an angel certainly can't lie. It is daring that Dante places these words in the mouth of an angel because they are in direct contradiction with the assertions of the Church. And it is, I believe, just for this that the commentators rush to assure themselves that the angel symbolizes a confessor and therefore a priest, a man of the Church. Page 149. It's not about confession. Apart from the fact that the word confession does not appear and that Dante doesn't confess any sins, this identification poses a problem. If we're dealing with confession here, having had the angel's absolution and certainly not having sinned during the ascent of purgatory, Beatrice could not ask it of him. Chiavacchi is also aware of the inconsistency, who in fact tries to run for cover by pointing out that the man who climbed the steps and knelt in front of the angel is not Dante Alighieri, weighed down with his sins, as he will be with Beatrice instead in cantos 30 and 31, but the penitent Christian man in a general sense before confession. This does not detract from the fact that the scene has its charm, not lightly. There is then another consideration to make, which seems to me determined to exclude that it deals with confession, and is based on the first verses of the next canto, which say, When I had crossed the threshold of the gate, that, since the soul's aberrant love would make the crooked way seem straight, is seldom used. Purgatory 10, 1-2. Chiavacchi concludes that the object of love misdirected by man, that is their sin, falling into disuse. But confession is a function of man's sin. It is not sin that makes it fall into disuse. On the contrary, one could say. However, all the commentators explain that that door seldom opens, without even taking into account that what they say would be absurd if it related to confession, that is notoriously a frequent procedure, that all must fulfill at least once a year to be able to take communion. The opening of that door, instead, alludes to a solemn passage that constitutes a unique and unrepeatable event in the life of a man, and that, moreover, few perform, as is said, without a shadow of a doubt in the two verses. Personally, I believe that it corresponds to the first stage of the consolamentum, of which I will speak more later.